folks. We are live. And unfortunately, my voice is kind of raspy today. But we have Congressman Fine coming on, so I wanted to make sure that I was here. I got my tea. We're going to get through this. So much going on. So much going on in the world. Wow, my voice sounds horrible. I have literally been working my voice all morning long, trying to get my any semblance back of a voice. And maybe I should have postponed this, but I have a congressman coming on, so I can't really take the luxury of postponing a congressman. But I went to a concert on Wednesday, and a little bit too much screaming. I sound like a cross between RFK Jr. and that guy from Larry David, Curb Your Enthusiasm. But we got about an hour and some change that we're going to talk about things. And we're here for the long haul. We are here for the long haul. Are we live on? We are live on all platforms, folks. God, this sounds horrible. I'm so sorry, everybody. I have to be really low key. I'm not sick. That's the good thing. I'm not sick. I'm just got this nasty. I'm not sick. That's the good thing. I'm not sick. I'm just. So we're gonna have to figure this out, but we are not giving up, and the voice does not stop the movement. My voice sounds terrible. LOL. Anyways, just texting my producer. Everybody, including ChatGPT, was like, just go forward. ChatGPT was so smart. Gave me this list of every single thing to do to get myself back. Steam, and tea, honey, lemon. Anyways, LOL. We're getting LOLs all across the board here. I really wanted these sound bites. I wanted these sound bites with Randy Fine so bad. But here we go. I'm going to have to, while we got time, I'm going to pull up just a quick pot of tea. Because this shit's crazy. Hold on 1 second, guys. Share the links. Randy's going to be here in 5 minutes. All right, so this is a really unfortunate situation because I'm just gonna have to talk low, and we're gonna go. But there's so much to cover. So much has happened in the last week. But at the same time, I feel like the Jew grift is over. Everybody's trying to pivot. Everybody's trying to figure out what Jew grift comes next. And Tucker's leading the charge. ChatGPT, let's say. My voice sounds absolutely terrible. It's worse than where we were yesterday. I'm live streaming, and my guest is coming in 5 minutes. ChatGPT, what can I do? It's entertaining, folks. Okay, voice rescue. Stop talking. Take small sips of water. Hum quietly every 10 seconds. It's horrible. Anyways, so we got so much going on. I'm actually going to call their congressman. I'm going to call Randy and see if he wants to reschedule. What do you guys think? Leave a comment below. Should I reschedule or should I just go like this? I need to hear what the audience thinks. Can you guys hear me? Is this even legible? Are you guys even like able to hear anything? Send a message in the live chat. So, oh gosh, what a horrible thing. All right, we're calling Congressman Fine. I can't cancel live on air like that. That's ridiculous. We're just going to go. We're going for it. I'm going to turn up my microphone and look, play with the audios. Make it count. Nothing crazy is like really going down anymore, because there's no war. So nobody has anything to say. And so it's always like this constant Jew grift from all of them. Yeah. It's tough, folks. It's crazy. Good luck. Everybody's like, good luck. Yeah, right. Good luck. So it's this is crazy. I'm gonna see if I could cancel and reschedule. Give me a sec, guys. This is just out of control. I really been nursing this voice all week, trying to get it back. Oh, here's the congressman. Forget that. We're going live, folks. We're going live. All right, we got with us Congressman Randy Fine coming in. Congressman, I have to apologize to you before we get started. I went to a concert on Wednesday. My voice is horrible. But because you're a sitting member of Congress, I couldn't take the chance to reschedule. So welcome to the Adam King Show. And it's a great honor to have you, sir.
Good to be here. All right, you may have to type your questions out though, so you may have to hold up like cue cards or something. But
it's really funny.
I guess that means I'm going to do most of the talking. All right.
I guess so.
It's hot tea with cream or with
what
honey.
I got honey, ginger, and I lost my voice Wednesday, so I thought that it would be better by now. But I was going over the show with my producer, and he's like, "No, you have to show up. You have to get there. The congressman this is too vital." So with everything going on in the world, the Republican Party, Tucker Carlson, anti-Semitism, I titled today's show, "The Future of Jews in the Republican Party." And it's a really worthwhile question to ask because, first of all, you're the most outspoken Jew in Congress, the only yarmulke-wearing Jew in Congress. What is your take, Randy, on our place in the party moving forward with each prospective candidate? One of the things I hate that's going on is everybody's trying to divide up the corpse of Trump, and it hasn't even been 1 year. So they're all pivoting, Vance and Tucker and blah, blah, blah. Where's our place in the Republican Party moving forward?
Well, thanks for having me. I actually think it's a much bigger question, and I think I'll talk for a little bit because you probably won't mind given your voice. I think it's what is the future of the United States? Because I think that what people need to understand is no civilization in the history of the world that has chosen to embrace anti-Semitism as an organizing principle has survived. So anti-Semitism is basically a declaration that you're done, and then you fall victim to all kinds of other things, and then you ultimately cease to exist as a civilization. So I think as Jews in the Republican Party goes, so goes America. There
Mm.
was a time in the Democratic Party where I always thought Democrats were stupid, even when I was a kid, but I never thought they were anti-Semitic, and that changed over the last 30 years. Frankly, when I was a kid, there might have been more anti-Semites in the Republican Party, but we worked
Right.
hard to make the party very friendly to Jews. I think part of the reason why most Jews are still Democrats is because of that artifact. That, well, I don't know. I think the anti-Semites might be in the Republican Party. And we worked
That
hard
Pat
to make it appear.
Buchananism.
Yeah, we worked hard to make it friendly. But so
Mm.
now here we are. The Jews are a meaningful part of the party. We helped Ron DeSantis get elected in 2018 in Florida. We certainly helped President Trump get over the finish line. We're a meaningful part of the party. We're the only party that seems to be rock step with Jews and with our relationship with Israel. And now they're trying to do to the Republican Party what they did to the Democratic Party. It started small. I serve with 219 Republicans. Only two of them are anti-Semites. 217
Which two
are
would you
with us.
say?
Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas
And
Massey
Thomas Massey.
are clearly anti-Semites.
Yeah.
But now we've got these we'll call them this sort of influencer class, which I
Mm.
think is driven by money, whether it's direct funding from foreign regimes or an ability to get clicks and that sort of thing that have gone full anti-Semite. I mean, maybe beating up on Jews is an easy way to get ratings and make yourself feel good about yourself, but it
It
is a
seems like anybody who
dangerous
is
time.
willing. It seems like
Sorry.
anybody willing. So sorry. It seems like anybody who is willing to say derogatory things to Jews gets astroturfed on Twitter.
Well, there is a lot of it. I mean, I think there are huge bot farms out there. I've seen it in my own media, and I think what's going on. I think there are foreign actors at play for a variety of reasons. Look, Qatar is clearly a Jew-hating, anti-Semitic regime, and they fund a lot of this stuff, and they've been funding groups that have targeted me for years. So clearly, you've got countries like Qatar, and then you've got other countries that don't actually care about Jews or Israel or anti-Semitism, places like China that have decided that in order to weaken the United States, they just want to foment division.
Mhm.
So they're funding a lot of this in order to rip us apart as a society, to make us collapse from within, because they can't beat us on the battlefield, so they'll beat us by destroying us. And whether it's promoting transgenderism or Gazan Arabs or whatever it is, I think a lot of it is intended to simply divide the American population and make the country collapse. And to be quite honest, they are being very successful in generating that division. And so I think there is, it's a fight that we have to have. I also think there's a lot of people who just, deep down, I think when your life sucks, um, you don't want to take responsibility. You look for someone to blame. So, like,
Yeah.
look at a guy like Tucker Carlson. This was a guy who was the king of Fox News, the number one conservative commentator in the world, and now he runs a podcast out of his garage in Maine. I mean, it's a huge fall from grace. Well, his life hasn't turned out the way he wanted it to turn out, so it's got to be somebody's fault. Well, whose fault is it? Well, I'm going to blame the Jews, and I
Right.
think you see a lot of people when their lives
But it's
don't turn
clear
out the way
that
they
Tucker
want.
had these beliefs before. Like while he was at Fox, he was lying to us. And so why do we think that he's not lying now? But the Tucker Carlson network is very peculiar, Congressman, because like it just personally, I'm not a fraction of the size of Tucker Carlson. I would never sell my namesake, the Adam King show, the way that he sold Tucker Carlson for a very low amount. It's not a lot of money comparing to where he was. So there's a lot of speculation on the internet about Tucker Carlson being, like some deep state honeypot, you know, um, uh, foreign influence program intended to divide the party. What's your take on that?
Well, I suspect there's foreign money involved. I mean, you don't go to like Iran and interview the Iranian president and go to Russia and interview the Russian president and give them these sort of softball-y interviews. I mean, the whole thing kind of stinks to high heaven. So I think, he's probably just put himself out to the highest bidder. Why? I don't know. But I mean, look, the guy's clearly a kook. I mean, even the FBI yesterday had to call him a kook, and it's a sad fall from grace. What makes him dangerous, though, is that he has a brand that was built up before he went into kookville. So
Mhm.
most people don't watch his podcast. They all what they know is the Tucker Carlson of Fox News of years ago, who did not sound like a deranged lunatic. And
Mhm.
so that's why he has credibility that's frankly just not deserved anymore. The guy's just a nut.
What's your take on like, obviously he had the I saw the Megan Kelly thing, and he's like, "It's my podcast. I'll treat anybody how I want," with these underhanded pitches to Nick Fuentes, but like literally arrows to Senator Ted Cruz. And he's
Well, look,
come
he,
out.
he is right. I mean, he can run his show however he wants, and I think that's one of the disingenuous arguments that you get, from the Groyper class, including Tucker, is that criticism equals cancellation. Their arguments aren't good, so they have to say if you criticize them, you want to cancel them. Cancellation is basically saying that Amazon Web Services won't host your software, or YouTube
Mm,
takes down your account, or X or Facebook, or the bank won't let you have a bank account. I mean,
right.
no one's calling for any of that for Tucker Carlson. I mean, they just call him the lunatic that he is. And so I think that he has the right to run his podcast however he so chooses. He's begged me to come on for 2 weeks now.
Would you go on?
What?
Would you go on?
No, I don't think I will, because I think the idea of letting him make money off of my appearance is kind of a gross concept. I mean, obviously, look, the Heritage Foundation was paying him $75,000 an episode to sponsor it. So obviously he's making, hundreds of thousands of dollars, I would
Right.
presume, per episode. And allowing him to monetize my appearance is just, I mean, why would I let the most dangerous anti-Semite in America make money off of me?
Well,
So
you're so eloquent and smart, and I would think that in a direct setting like that, you'd be able to really put a kibosh on him. Yeah, he'd make
yeah,
the
I,
money,
I
but
don't
the
know. I
virality
just
would hopefully help Jews.
Yeah, look, trust me, it's a decision that I struggle with, because part of me believes that God puts us where He wants us to be, and He's put me here in order to fight for what is truth and what is right,
Mhm.
and so going into the belly of the beast and fighting evil where it exists, I think is part of what I'm supposed to do. So there is an element of thought, but at the same time, going into a place where he would make money, it just seems somewhat untoward.
And
So
also, I saw the other day you were on Pierce Morgan, British citizen, non American, hosting a sitting member of Congress. And
yeah.
he attacks you by having Cenk Unger surprise debate. Now, I personally believe in debate, but debating in one's class. So if you were to debate Tucker Carlson, you're in different classes, you're a lawmaker. I would see an appropriate debate for you would be Thomas Massey, because you're both congressmen. How do you feel about doing something like that?
Well, I would probably debate Thomas Massey if he wanted to do that. I did debate Marjorie Taylor Greene. I humiliated her, which is, I don't know that she would ever want to go through that again. But
She's not that
but
smart.
No, she is not. But I did that. No, by the way, the Piers Morgan story is a good one. You'll get a kick out of it. Apparently, what happened is the Piers Morgan show reached out to the RNC, looking for a Republican to come on, and so the RNC gave them a list of 15 congressmen. I was one of the 15, and they snagged it, and they said, we want Randy Fine. They put me on. And when I saw it on my schedule, I said to my staff, I said, the only times I don't watch his show, but I said, the only time I see clips, it's like people screaming at each other. So
Yeah.
what are you getting me into? And they said, no, it's a one-on-one interview with Piers Morgan. I said, okay, I'll do it. So I got to the studio and I got mic'd up, and I was there a little bit early, and I could hear it, and I could hear they had this panel, and I heard that this Cenk guy was on it, along with some other terrorist and a couple of other people. And I said, well, this will be interesting. And then the interview starts, and it was a one-on-one interview. for the first, 3 or 4 minutes. And then he, as you pointed out, he ambushed me and brought Cenk in. I think clearly they had planned it in advance. I mean, it was clearly rehearsed. I just don't think they realized, I am bad at many things, but talking is not one of them. And
No, you
so,
eviscerated him. It was so
yeah,
embarrassing for
yeah,
you.
and I will note Piers Morgan has not invited me back on since. So, and even Piers was
He's
forced
blocked
to
me.
admit that,
He
yeah,
blocked me.
wow. I don't intend to block. I didn't mind it. It was almost a fair fight, 2-on-1, but
Mhm.
it was fine, and I didn't mind it. Now, was it appropriate to do? No, but it turned out to be fine. I will never forget though the 2 minutes that I sat there when Cenk was talking, thinking like, okay, this is my first one of these. How should my face look? How should I
Yeah,
respond to this? How should I deal with it? Should I interrupt him? Things like that, and kind of putting together a plan in 2 minutes for how to deal with it. And obviously, Piers was forced to apologize at the end and acknowledge that it was an ambush. And I'm very
yeah.
happy with how it turned out in the end.
Sank and his lap dog, Anna Kasparian, they like to shout over people. And so I noticed, like, I do these debates a lot, and I'll sit in the debate, and they just like shout, 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 shout. And as a respectable debater, you're waiting for a chance to get a word in. But with
Yeah.
them, you have to cut them off. You have to be strict. You have to be sharp. And you're an
Well,
incredible
it's
debater.
because they're not. Look, it's because they're not smart people, and
Mm,
they're so first they're dumb, and second their arguments are wrong. It's not a good combination. If you're dumb and right, well, okay, at least you have the rightness to fall back on. If you're smart and wrong, well, then you can probably make a good argument even if you are wrong. But in their case, they are both stupid and wrong. So the
right.
only the only option they have is to just scream and yell at people.
So Pierce and Tucker teamed up in Israel during the war. I don't know if you saw that. And they're both people who galvanized the division of America for profit. So, for instance, Tucker doesn't say anything about. I mean, 95% of his show is a Jew show. It's Jew only, and also Pierce Morgan. So for everybody that talks about America first and all this stuff, they love Pierce Morgan, and he's not even American. So, um,
Well, there's good money in groiperism. I mean, keep in mind
right.
we're generally talking about losers who live at home, don't have a job, don't have any
And they're
money, and
anonymous.
and so they just sit around and watch this stuff. I mean,
Mhm.
I always used to say I was reminded when Charlottesville happened, and you had these same kinds of people yelling, "Jews will not replace us. Jews will not replace us." One of my favorite interviews I did back when I was in the legislature, they said, "How do these people make you feel?" I said, "They don't have anything to worry about. We don't want to live at home with our moms in the basement playing video games all day." If they said, if these people were worried about being doctors and lawyers and scientists, maybe we would have something to worry about. But don't worry, we don't want to replace them. We're perfectly happy with them being the losers that they are. So I think there's a lot
That's
of
funny.
consumers of that because they don't have anything else to do. It's not like they're at work.
And what's the craziest thing? I like how you call it the Groiper class. The craziest thing about them is that they're all anonymous. And somehow the public is taking them so seriously, but they're not even brave enough to take themselves so seriously to put a picture of themselves, on their
Well,
profiles.
sure. Well, part of the
I mean,
reason it's anonymous is a lot. Some of it's real, but a lot of it is not. Again, it is these bot farms funded by Qatar,
so
Iran.
why do people take them seriously?
I don't know that people do take them seriously. So like I said, in my part, the elected Republicans that I serve with are overwhelmingly not anti-Semitic. And so, I mean, 2 out of 219 is less than 1%. I
Mm.
would say that's pretty good.
So like the Groiper class, if nobody takes them seriously, Nick Fuentes gets platformed on Patrick Bay David, Tim Pool, Tucker Carlson, and then all of a sudden he's friends with Tucker Carlson. He hated him. Now he's friends with Candace Owens again. They're like creating a block of power. Who's behind it?
Well, again, I think it's about making money, as Elon Omar liked to say. It's all about the Benjamins. And I mean, again, I think there's a lot of people available to watch that content while the rest of us are at work. So I think that's a big part of what it is. And I think these bad actors have flooded the zone with money, and it's a bill that I am working on would require influencers. If you want to run a show and give your own opinion, so be it. But if you're being paid to advocate by anyone, I think you should have to disclose it. So I'm a politician. If people
Right.
want to give money to my campaign, they can, but I have to report it, and people can then say, "Oh, look, Randy Fine got $3,000 from XYZ." And then they can see it. I think if you're Tucker and you're getting paid to say a lot of this kooky stuff, you ought to have to share it and say who paid you. And I think it's the same thing with a lot of these quote unquote protests, which appear to be organic or not. Part of what's happening is they're taking advantage of people see someone with a lot of followers saying something, they assume it's organic. When they find out it's paid for, they discount it highly. And so I think a lot of this is just about money.
So I th- I would love to agree with you that it's about money, but I think a lot of it is much more sinister than just money. For example, without Jewish support, the MAGA movement would have never taken the White House both times. And there's this idea that there's like no enemies to the right, for example. So, in that context, that there's no enemies to the right, enemies can flourish. They do that on the
Well, let,
left too.
let me be clear. I'm talking about the motivation of the influencers. I
Mm.
think for them, it is money. The question then becomes, why are people paying the influencers? And so I think it is a couple of reasons. I think one is to destroy the country from within. I think another reason is, in the case of some, is to weaken support for Israel. And I think there's a third strain, which is to rip the Republican Party apart. The same
Mm.
people who are paying for a lot of this nonsense are also paying to get people like Zoran Mandami elected. So I think that there are multiple reasons why it is going on. And I think that in many cases there is some underlying anti-Semitism there as well. So there's lots of reasons it's going on. I just push back on the notion that there's this sort of upsurge in anti-Semitism. It's being stoked, and we have to deal with it. And that's why I'm so grateful that President Trump, look, I told you there's two anti-Semitisms and two anti-Semites in Congress. President Trump's made it a goal to squash one of them, and the other one he's criticized by name. So obviously President Trump is with us, and so we just need to be grateful for that and continue to fight the fight to keep our party up, the party that it has been.
And I love what you did with the dual loyalty act, and I like how you used the terminology of the mainstream alt right.
Yeah.
What are you going to name the bill that you're the influencers? Because it does sound like a FARA issue.
Okay. So you asked about the dual loyalty thing. I'll talk about that first. Yeah, for years, people would ask me if I was a dual citizen of Israel, and I would try to avoid answering the question because it's a fair question, but the motive for asking it was not pure. Like, no one ever asks Martin O'Shaughnessy if he's a dual citizen of Ireland. It was because I'm Jewish. Therefore, are you a dual citizen?
Right.
And so now, and so Laura Loomer asked me, and I know she's not an anti-Semite, and so I answered the question, and then I thought about it. I said, well, now that the cat's out of the bag, that I'm not a dual citizen of Israel, I've never been a dual citizen, never lived there, no one in my family ever has. I said, this good policy, which is you shouldn't be able to be in Congress if you're a dual citizen. I can now be the one who pushes it because my motives are pure. And it turns out, based on the little bit of research that we've done, it does appear there are many dual citizens in Congress,
Really?
but it doesn't appear that any of them are Jewish.
Can you name some of
So,
them?
well, no, I'm not going to because it's not certain.
They
Um,
won't care.
but
The internet won't care if they're not Jewish.
Well, and that's the thing. So I figured I will take you and I will raise you one. And so I
Interesting.
think having the Jewish guy, because by the way, again, I agree. If you're now, by the way, my bill would not say if you've ever been a citizen of another country, you can't serve in Congress, but it would say you can't be a dual citizen and serve in Congress. And we'll see what happens with it. I think you asked about the influencer bill. We're still figuring out how to do that. So I'm telling you the premise, which is if you are paid to engage in political speech, you should have to disclose who's paying
Mhm.
you is the premise. Because people should know, because then they'll discount what people are saying. It's
Right.
one thing if someone with 10 million followers says, I hate so and so, and people go, well, I respect them, and if I hate so and so, well, there must be reason to do it. It's another thing if that person's getting paid to say that, then people go, oh, they're just a paid shill. And I think that's what the
Yeah.
other side is attempting to monetize.
Now you're such a stalwart against them that they are throwing everything at you in 2026. First of all, why you out of everybody else? Obviously because of Israel and the Jew thing. But like, is this like a move to purge Jews from the party? Like you're the Jewish congressman, and if you're not there, what does that mean for Jews in the party?
Well, I'm not the only Jewish congressman. I do have three Republican Jews who are my colleagues, all of whom are more senior than I am. I think what may make me a little bit different is I lean in on the issue. I
Yeah,
did
you do.
during my 8 years in the legislature. I obviously wear a kippah, and that bothers them. And I all of the tricks that they have used over time to try to silence this, it doesn't work with me. I'm not afraid of the fight. Some people run away from bullets, some people run towards them. And so I think they look at me the way our side looks at the squad. As someone who is unapologetically Jewish, who believes in the American-Israeli relationship, who thinks America is a Judeo-Christian nation, does not want Muslim terror infiltrating the country, and is willing to speak. And because God blessed me with the ability to speak, I'm a relatively good advocate for these views, and so of course they would want to squash it, but they're not going to succeed. I mean, I'm president's with me. I'm the only politician in America that Donald Trump has endorsed three times in a year and a
Wow.
half.
Baruch Hashem.
So, because last year, 18 months ago, I was running for the state Senate in Florida. President Trump endorsed me, and then I won. And then 2 weeks later, President Trump asked me to run for Congress, and he endorsed me for that. And then just a couple of weeks ago, he endorsed me for my reelection. So, um,
And
I've got the president.
since you're bringing up these things, I think it's so important outside of the Jewish issue that if you look at the success of Florida across the board, Florida had its renaissance when you were an assemblyman, a state senator, and now a congressman. You have been intimately involved in every aspect of the Floridian Renaissance. What are some things that you uniquely brought to the table to really create what America is seeing as the greatest state in the union at the current moment?
Well, that's kind of you to say. I think the Florida miracle is the result of many people, and I think what it really is it's 30 years of consistent conservative governance across multiple governors, across multiple Senate presidents and House speakers, across hundreds of good conservative legislators. So it's the result of a lot of people. I was one, and I'll talk about what I brought to it. But the other thing we had in Florida is we had term limits. And so, when you get elected to the Florida legislature, you've got 8 years to make your mark, which means people can't just sit around forever. If they want to put points on the board, they have to do it quickly. And there's always fresh blood coming into the system. I think that's part of it. Now, what did I bring to the table in my 8 years? I brought a couple things. Number one, I brought my ability to speak. That was my role, really, for my 6 of my 8 years in the legislature. I was sort of the designated hitter for when we needed someone, whether it was to go on TV or to speak on the floor to explain the reasoning for good conservative policies. And so that was part of my job. Imagine the designated hitter for public speaking. And I also wasn't afraid to take on controversial bills. So, for example, when we needed to go after Disney because Disney was trying to override the will of Florida's voters, I was the one who ran the bill to do that. When we found out that there were surgeons in Florida mutilating children in the name of fake transgender science, they were cutting off their body parts, they were giving them drugs that made them sterile. I was the one who ran the bill to do that. So I was when I would get asked to run a bill, I would always have one question. I would say, "Is it controversial?" And if they said no, I would say, well, then give it to somebody else. Because when you're in the Florida House, you can only run 6 bills. And so you have to pick them carefully. And so I was focused on that. The other thing I did in Florida that I am largely responsible for on my own was making Florida the safest place in America to be Jewish, to make
Amen.
sure that in Florida we don't have the kinds of problems
Oh,
that we have
sure.
in other states. And so while that was not the only thing I worked on, I've talked to you about other things. I always made sort of one of my 5 or 6 bills something related to that because I was the only Jewish Republican. And so I saw it as my obligation, as I do now, to serve the constituents I represent. Of the district. It was the 53rd district, then the 33rd district, and then I think the 19th district of the Florida Senate. Now I serve the 6th district of Florida, but I also serve a broader community. Just as women legislators often feel like they speak for women, or a black legislator feels like they speak for the black community. I also speak not only for my own constituents, but for the broader Jewish community as well. And so a lot of the things that we passed in Florida in my time in the legislature, they would not have passed if I had not been there. Whether it was, basically making encampments illegal, whether it was stopping the distribution of anti-Semitic litter and graffiti, whether it was attacking Jews, whether it was letting Muslim groups block roads, all of those things were things that I stopped in Florida.
For Jews like myself in California, obviously we just had our redistricting, the Prop 50 voter fraud passed. I released an episode on it. They were like, it was so much voter suppression going on across the state. But when I turned to Congress, there's nobody that represents the interest of Jews. So not only do you represent the 6th district, but I think what you just said is very true. That across this great country, millions of Jews look to you for your leadership, which has really been, and that's why we need to protect you. So, for all my listeners, which is many, we're constantly plugging you and constantly making sure that we keep you in the house, for this balance of power. Because, and it's unfortunate that so much weight falls on one man's shoulders, but here you are. So we don't really have a choice. I want to ask you, I want to pivot to Israel a little bit. Netanyahu has been very focused on ending U.S. military foreign aid. I don't know if you're involved in any of that stuff. I don't know how, as an American, you feel about that. I know you're an American first. You're one of the most based Americans in the entire country. Is this something you encourage, or do you encourage American foreign aid the way that it's been going on?
Well, look, I think the less money we can spend on foreign aid, the better. I mean, we are running a very large debt and deficit every year, and the less money we send to other countries, the better. So, if we can end aid to Israel, I think that's a winner just on the balance sheet. I think what the Groypers don't understand is it's a very small amount of money. I mean, we have $1.5 trillion deficit, and I think we're talking about $3 billion. So,
Right.
it's every little bit helps. But I also think we should be trying to end it just because it removes the argument from Tucker and the Groyper class. I mean, if you were to talk to Tucker and his Groyper buddies, you would think that we spent half the federal budget on Israel. You would think there were American troops in Gaza fighting. I mean, none of these
Mm.
things are true. So, in the same way that I grabbed the dual citizen legislation and advanced it, I think it is good to take away, to strip the Groyper class, Tucker and the Groyper class, of any kind of arguments they have. So they're obsessed with this $3 billion. If you take that $3 billion away, then it removes one of the arguments in their arsenal. But I also think it's better for Israel to not be reliant on anyone for their own protection. And because it's not the same country today that it was 70 years ago. And so I think that by becoming more independent and more reliant, it makes Israel a stronger place. So I think Israel not needing U.S. aid is a win-win. It's a win for America. And I think it's a win for Israel. By the way, if it's a loss for anyone, it's a loss for America, because the countries that we give aid to, we have influence over. If we stop giving them aid, then we give up some of the influence,
Plus,
and we
that
get
money
far
comes
more
back.
benefit.
That
We get
money,
far more benefit from the Israel relationship than they get from us. Far, it's not even close.
yeah,
And
that
and but
80,
but I think politically, it still makes sense to try to get rid of it.
that 80% comes back to U.S. weapons manufacturers. That's going to now be taken out of the economy.
Yeah.
But like the way that I see it is that Israel kind of represents everything that the based America First right wants. They're they're a proof that American foreign aid actually worked. Unlike other countries that take foreign aid, nobody's ever wanted to stop it. So it's almost like saying American foreign aid worked. It doesn't have to be forever. We built it. It's done. The building's complete, and now we can occupy the building. So, and then in addition, if you look at you and your actions in Congress with the Dual Loyalty Act, you're giving these people everything that they want in a congressman. And it drives them crazy because you're Jewish. And Israel drives them crazy because Israel's Jewish. And so they always say, oh, it's not anti Semitic to criticize Israel. But why are you criticizing Israel if Israel's everything you want another country to be? So I wanted to touch on that. Have you had any meetings with Netanyahu?
I don't talk about those sort of conversations with private leaders, but I have been with him, and I have had some great interactions with folks. I did just get put on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and so I'm meeting with people
Congratulations.
from thank you from all over the world. But look, they understand what I do every day, and how important. Because look, I think Israel sees themselves not just as responsible for Israelis, but I think they also see themselves as responsible for the broader Jewish diaspora. And I think the anti-Semitism they've seen prop up in the United States bothers them as well. So they understand what I do here, and why I do it. And the good news is I can walk and chew gum. I can do 81 visits in the 6th congressional district during 4 of the 5 weeks of the August recess, making more visits than they'd ever seen. And then I can spend one of those 5 weeks in Israel with my colleagues, introducing them and talking about why the Israel-America relationship is so important. So I can do both of these things at the same time. I think we have to understand, though, there are a lot of anti-Semites out there. And I think part of what makes me suitable to deal with this is I've had to deal with them my whole life. I mean, I grew up with a lot of anti-Semitism. I'm used to it. But I also think I think you have an unholy alliance between Tucker and the Groyper class and Muslim terrorists. I mean, it is not
Exactly.
all. It is not. It is this. It is this intersection between the two. And to be clear, the Muslim terrorists don't just hate the Jews; they hate the Christians too. They hate everyone who's not like them. And so there are two groups of people who have targeted me. They are not the same, although as it relates to Jews, their intersections are aligned.
Now, being on the House Foreign Affairs Committee and being a kippah wearing Jew, a very distinct, unique type of American, outside of the scope of Israel, are there any other countries that gravitate to you that you and your Judaism are used to benefit America abroad that has nothing to do with Israel whatsoever?
Well, I mean, I just got put on the committee, and I got excited to learn about it. Look, I believe that the most important civilizational struggle that we're having right now is the desire by mainstream Muslims to create a worldwide caliphate. And so I think dealing with that issue of mainstream Muslim terror in Europe is a big deal. And as we see the UK fall, I generally call it the United Islamic Kingdom now, as we
Yeah.
see Francistan and all of these other places. I think that is, I think, a great global concern that we have to deal with. I also think China and their nefarious activities, Russia and others. So there's a lot of places to be focused on to make sure the world is safe and secure for
I think
everybody.
I think England, who's traditionally been an adversary of America, our founding adversary, but
Sure.
England is really the most the lowest hanging fruit that the Muslims could get a nuclear bomb. And also
Yeah.
France is the same way. These are nuclear powers. Amongst your colleagues, are there any discussions about England falling and the nuclear capabilities of the country falling to Sharia jihadis?
I think there's some concern. I think, look, I think part of the problem we have in dealing with Muslim terror is that it's easier to stick your head in the ground and say, oh, it's fine. We're all one giant human family. We all share the same values than it is to acknowledge that there's evil in this world and you have to fight it every day. And so I think it's difficult for people to wrap their head around. In the same way, by the way, it's difficult for people to wrap their head around what Tucker's become. I mean, it's
Mhm.
difficult for people to wrap their head around what the UK has become, a place where frankly some of the things I probably said here could get me arrested if we were doing a podcast over there. And I think that's very disconcerting to a lot of people. But my concern is about the I mean about the growth of mainstream Muslim terror around the world. And we are seeing some green shoots. I think that, for example, Germany told Syrian refugees, guess what? Time to go home. So there may be some sense in Europe that these are not the kinds of people that they want to have in their countries, and we've got to look at it here. As I often say, Elon Omar was a choice. She was not born here. She had no right to be here. We as a country allowed her to come here. Someone who clearly hates America. So we have to make sure that we do not go down the same path that they went down over there.
So I know that you're much more mainstream and less conspiratorial, but are you familiar with Operation Paperclip?
Nope.
So Operation Paperclip, the CIA repatriated Nazis after World War II into America to help with NASA, like Werner
Oh,
von Braun. You know the basics of that.
yeah. I just didn't know what it was called.
So my question that I talk about on the show, my like investigative journalism, I try to follow a lot of these people. As a sitting member of Congress, I imagine you have a much more classified access than I do. What are your thoughts? And forgive me if this sounds too conspiratorial at all, but what are your thoughts about Nazi groups, NSDAP groups, regathering 80 years down the line in America with this rise of sudden and unexpected astroturfed anti Semitism? Do you think that this could possibly have anything to do with Operation Paperclip?
No, sorry to
No,
burst your bubble. I
it's okay.
think
I got to ask the
what it is,
conspiratorial question.
no, no, no. What I
Clapping
think
it.
it is it's what I think it is it's losers um, who are unhappy with their lives, and they are looking for someone to blame. And look, there's a lot of things going on in our society. I mean, many of the ties that bound us together have frayed, and people are looking for meaning. The destruction of the nuclear family, people stopping going to church and synagogue. A lot of things have played into this, but I think the Groyper class, I think, is largely made up of losers. And no, these are not like super smart geniuses that came over here from Germany. These are just like, again, it's the Jews will not
No,
replace us.
I don't think that they are like these
No.
Nazis. I was more thinking. I read this book by David DeJong called Nazi Billionaires, and it was really about all the different Nazi families that survived Nuremberg and got to keep their wealth, like the Quants, the von Flicks, the Reimanns, some really powerful families. And as we are always wondering, oh, is it Qatar? Is it Qatar? Where's this money coming from? Well, I just wondered if anybody or if you or anybody looked into that. I would highly suggest the read David DeJong's book, Nazi Billionaires. He is not a conspiracist at all.
I'll look at it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't. I think it is. I think the reason it's so loud is I think the internet has made it easy for people who would be isolated in their neighborhood to find other. Well, it's easy for people to find belonging now in a way that it wasn't before. Belonging used to be geographically based, right?
Mhm.
You went to the church in your neighborhood, you went to the political party meeting in your neighborhood.
Right.
Everything belonging was based on where you lived. Now you can find belonging with people anywhere in the world, and that has a lot of positives. It's not all bad. But whereas good things can find common cause online, so can bad things. And so I think you find a lot of, again, isolated losers living in the basement with their mom, who find other isolated losers living in the basement with their mom.
Do you think that Elon Musk has any role in all this? The rise in anti-Semitism?
Well, I mean, again, the here's what I would say. I use
He's the guy we tiptoe around. We don't want to. We don't want
no,
to
no, no,
like
no, no.
directly
By
accuse
the way,
him
if
of
you can't
anything.
tell, I don't tiptoe around anything. So I would say this: narcotics, opiates, transformed medicine in America. You could now do surgeries. You could now treat things that you could not do before because you invented painkillers. But misused, you could create addicts and all kinds of other problems. I think technology is the same. The internet is an amazing tool for good, but it can also be used as an amazing tool for bad. I believe that Elon Musk helped save the world when he bought X. I absolutely do, because he created an ability for people to share information unfettered by traditional media sources. And by the way, I believe Israel would have lost the war against the Gazan Arabs if it wasn't for Elon Musk and X.
Why is that?
Because when the traditional media did what they always do, which is lie about what Israel's doing, people have no ability to get other information. And then ultimately the pressure comes and they end up stopping the fight. Israel and people like you have the ability to get the truth out over places like X, the truth about what actually was going on with the Gaza Arabs. So that's an incredible good. Now, does it come with bad? Yes. I mean, again, you can have massive bot farms, anonymity. Last time I looked, for example, 40% of the comments on my social media come from other countries.
Wow.
You know, um, why should someone in Saudi Arabia or Pakistan care what I think? Now, people will say, no, 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 no. What about the Israelis? What about the Israelis? Um, I'd have to go back. I shared the number on my social media. I may get it wrong right here, but you can see where those comments come from. And I think that it was something like for every one comment that someone made from me in Israel, there were like 30 that came from Yemen and Iran and Qatar and places that Pakistan probably. So if I use comments from Israel, probably are positive. Comments from Pakistan are probably negative. It was like 30-1. So I do think there are things that Elon could do.
Mm,
I'll give some ideas. Number one, there was this idea of putting a flag next to your name
that would have been
based on
great.
where you're from. I think that is a good idea.
Mm.
Um, I think Elon could choose to say, you've got to no more anonymity. Accounts have to be tied back to a person. Your face, a name has to be real. That's a little bit more controversial, but I do think there are things that could be done, because I think the bodification of the online world is one of its greatest problems. But I think if you ignore the comments, which I largely do, the groypers that are going to be watching this are going to be devastated to learn I really don't care what they write on my social media. I don't ever see them myself. I think dealing with that. But if I could make one change to X, it would be it would be flags next to people. If I could make a second change to X, it would be that I could limit who sees my content based on country. So, I mean, I don't really care what people in Qatar think about what I write. I mean, if somebody from California wants to write about me, well, the stuff that I do can affect them. But I think the number one thing would be to acknowledge where people are from.
I would agree with that. There's so many foreign accounts on X
Yeah.
of foreigners like Ahmed Suleiman and Adame Media and Lupus and all these others that have they don't live in America. They're not American, but they have so much influence here through
And the biggest
X.
issue are the ones that claim to be American that are not.
Right.
Those are real are the most troubling of all. But so that's what he could do. But no, net, I believe I long ago said I think three people were going to save the world: Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and Bibi Netanyahu, and I continue to believe that
You
today.
continue to believe that. I know that X had really horrible Q3 earnings, and Meta had the greatest earnings of its entire existence in Q3 of this year. And I was wondering if that's because people are just so sick of the botted anti-Semitism on X, and that they gravitate towards other forms of social media. So if you look at, for instance, Instagram, now all of a sudden on Instagram, it's okay to make anti-Semitic posts, to make nonstop Jew hate accounts, and they've lowered those restrictions. I'm still censored there, but other people can talk about Jews nonstop on Instagram now. Um, with Larry Ellison buying TikTok, I'm really hoping for a more neutral platform, because I don't think that X is so neutral. I think it's very heavily tilted one way, and that's against the Jews. What's your take?
I think X is tilted against the Jews not by design, but I think X is able
By
to be
consequence.
manipulated. I think X is able to be manipulated. I don't think it's by design. I think TikTok was manipulated by design, and I just think volume matters in the world of X. And there's a lot more. I mean, look, there's a lot of Muslim terrorists out there. I mean, not all Muslims are terrorists, but mainstream Islam is a faith, is a belief in terrorism, and there's a lot of them, and you can see them online.
And another great thing that a Jew has done for our wonderful country, Larry Ellison purchasing TikTok and taking the Chinese Communist Party out of American social media. What's your take on TikTok? How do you think it's going to compete with X and Meta? And where do you think it's going to the new TikTok is going to fall? I personally have been banned from the old CCP TikTok. I'm hoping to get on TikTok, the new one.
I think
I don't have a controversial message, but I've been censored because I am associated with Infowars banned video. I run a counter narrative against the ecosystem, that the echo chamber. But so I'm very excited about the TikTok thing. I really want to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, I think that it will be very powerful. I think TikTok is I think a very kind of addictive product, and I think the Chinese leverage that addiction to pump it full of bad things. I think it will do quite well. I've never had TikTok. I won't put an account on there. I'm not will until the Chinese involvement is completely extricated. I'm not going to do that. But I think it will do. I think it will do quite well. Look, I'll tell you a little story. When we were in Florida and we were dealing, like, where did this social contagion of transgenderism come from in our youth? We found that it came from social media, but it did not come from X. It did not come from Instagram. It did not come from Facebook. It did not come from Snapchat. It came from TikTok. Why? Because it's a lot easier to defeat the American military when all the men think they're women.
Yeah.
And so they have used that as a weapon, and I think that getting it away from them is going to be a huge win for the United States.
Yeah, I agree. And I would love it if these people can um, honor the Jews for our contribution to this country, but instead they see it as a threat. Oh, the Jews are acquiring a piece of media. Elon Musk and Prince Talal, who are the majority shareholders of X, they're not Jewish, but for some reason, this idea that Larry Ellison is going to own TikTok scares the bejesus out of them. Um,
Good.
yeah, good. I like watching them quiver. So in the grand scheme of things, I understand, you know, um, what we're faced up against, and it. I always say there's two things that divide America. One, a black person being killed by a police officer, just expect riots in the streets, and two, some sort of conflict that involves Jews, Gaza, Palestine, Israel, and this all kind of lumps together. Like the Palestinians go to the Black Lives Matter, the Black Lives Matter go to the Palestinians. It's all like one George Soros cluster.
Stew,
Uh,
stew.
it's a Soros stew. Exactly. Soros stew. I know President Trump was in the Oval Office today and gave George Soros and Reid Hoffman a shout out. What are your thoughts on that with Portland? Is there any talk about running the military through Portland and silencing all that, taking our cities back?
Well, I think we have to get to the bottom of all of this. Again, who funds these? I talked about it earlier, these protests, these influencers, who's behind it and why. People, when Americans see 1,000 people standing on a street corner waving a sign, they generally go, wow, they care that much that they're willing to go out and wave a sign. I ought to take that seriously.
Mm.
But when they see 1,000 people that are paid to wave a sign, they go, "Oh, that's just people being paid to wave a sign." You know,
Mm.
it's so, and so kind of ending people's ability to manipulate our emotions by making things that appear to be organic paid for is something that we need to solve. And no one, I think, has done more of that than George Soros. So I appreciate what the president's doing there.
How do we get, how do we get justice for all this with George Soros and Reid Hoffman? It just seems like
I don't
the
know,
amount.
but let me give you a great example with me. So in my election, when I got elected April 1st, I ran against. I'm in a district that Trump won overwhelmingly. Democrats never really had a chance to win. Um, and I ran against a guy whose introductory video literally said, "Hi, I'm a Muslim." And by the way, what he did is he dressed so he looked like a traditional Muslim. By the way, a white guy, but I'm a Muslim. And then it said, "I'm a bisexual," because those go together, right? Muslim, bisexual. Then he dressed again in a
Oh
provocative
my
way,
God,
and
jeez, well,
then it was, "Hi, I'm a Muslim. I'm a bisexual. I'm a drug addict." That was the third. That was the third part of his video. So he was a
wow,
Muslim, bisexual, drug addict. Yet somehow he raised $15 million
that's crazy.
in 9 weeks, $250,000 a day, all in small dollar donations. Really?
Wow,
Where'd all that
that's
money come from?
so sketchy.
Totally.
And that's what they do because there's like, what is it, like a $20 reporting limit or $100 reporting
200
limit?
bucks. But yeah, yeah. I mean,
200 bucks.
they take advantage of the reporting limit, and that's what they did. And so we have to get behind a lot of this evil that is out there masquerade. This guy shouldn't have been able to raise $15, let alone 15 million. And again, where'd that money come
So
from? I mean,
why
these
do
are
we have a
all.
problem stopping these funding sources? What is the holdup that
It's great.
on our
I think
side?
I think Democrats are very good. They are very evil and good at getting done what they want. Republicans are good, but not as good at getting done the right things. What I've observed in Congress is there's a lot of desire to talk about problems. There's not necessarily the same desire to actually fix problems. It's also hard. We have a very tight majority, but I didn't come there to just talk about things. I came there to fix them.
Yeah, and you're gonna mess things up for the other side big time. I know that, just like you did in Florida, just like you've done your whole career. What's crazy is the Democrat. We're all fighting on the Republican side. They're like, "Oh God, there's a Republican congressman who's Jewish. We gotta attack him." And literally, you're like leading the charge against the Muslim invasion into America, and they want to attack you because you're Jewish and you support Israel. The Democrats would never waste a second to go after if Donald Trump or any of these billionaires were financing protests that were turning violent. You know that they would be in handcuffs overnight. Why is it that on our side we have such a problem litigating Democrats, but on the Democrat side they throw everything at us? Um, their attorney general is gonna Merrick Garland is gonna go bananas and do bend every law, but we have like this inability to prosecute Democrats who do corruption or even worse, real crimes. How do we get to over the ledge? How do we get to that place where we can actually clean up the country, put people who are financing this in behind bars? What's the process look like?
Well, I think you need more people like me, who are willing to fight
Absolutely, we need five
and
Randy
and
Fines in
and
Congress.
Yeah, I mean, you need people want to fight. I think you need fewer politicians. You need more people who are there to do the right thing. I mean, I worry about the future of this country far more than I worry about the next election. I worry
Yeah.
about the country that my kids will inherit, and I worry about the fact that I serve with people that hate America, and fundamentally wish for its downfall. And so I think we need people that worry more about the judgment of their children than they do the judgment of the voters. Your
Yeah.
children will forgive you if you lose an election. They will not forgive you if you waste the opportunity they have given you by going to Washington to fight for them. And so I don't know. I'm still new. I've been doing it for 7 months, but I'll tell you, as bad as I thought Washington would be, it's worse.
Yeah.
And so I think that we just have to be not afraid to lean into the fight.
Yeah.
And I'm not. And but here's the deal: when you're me, you take a lot of arrows. You take a lot people. Not it doesn't bother me to get attacked the way the Groypers and the Muslim terrorists do, but a lot of people can't deal with that, and so I think you've got to have a pretty thick skin.
Do you get it?
Tucker Carlson lies about me. I just chuckle, but
Mhm.
other people, I think it really bothers.
Do you get attacked this way only on X, or do you get attacked on other social medias as well?
On all the
On all the
platforms,
social
and,
media.
and phone calls and all kinds of. I mean, look, there are three people sitting in prison for making death threats against me. You know,
May they stay there a
um,
long time.
yeah, yeah. Well, so that I expect that they will be. So I mean, it's there are bad people in this world, but what are we going to do? Just lay down and let them win?
Yeah,
No, we can't do that.
exactly. That's been the problem of the Republican side this entire time is we've just
Well,
laid
Randy
down.
Klein's coming to town, so get ready.
That's dude, I'm afraid for them, man. I'm afraid for all this house purging that's about to go down. Literally a purging of the house. But I like this idea of congressional debates that our side really debates ourselves a lot. Republicans are constantly fighting each other. Steel sharpens steel. And we have,
Mhm.
a menagerie of understandings of every issue because we all debate. On the Democrat side, they don't debate at all. They are a monolithic NPC culture. And so I really hope that you in Congress, that you could really, really rile things up, and there's a lot of justice that people need, especially when it comes to stuff like Epstein and whatnot. Like I think it would be so epic if you, the Jew, keep a wearing Jew, were the one who got on Epstein disclosure and everything that they want that their politicians aren't giving them. The Jewish guy from Florida gives them. What's your take on the Epstein situation? Where do we go from here with Epstein? Is this a done deal because Trump said so, or is there going to be any sort of justice and influencers like the big celebrities like Bill Gates and other people who are deeply invested? The Harvard situation.
Well,
Do you have plans?
I intend to demand that Democrats answer the question of why they covered up Epstein in 2021 when they controlled the House, the Senate, and the presidency. I expect an answer to that. Why did they cover it up in 2022? Why did they cover it up in 2023? Why did they cover it up in 2024? And what's so magical in 2025 that all of a sudden they've got to lose their minds over it? What
Mm,
bothers me is that they don't actually care about what happened. If they had, they would have dealt with it in the past. And so before I share how I'm going to vote in 2025, they're going to have to explain why they did what they did in 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024. And I'm going to hold them accountable to answer that question. By the way, same goes for Massey and those people. Nobody cared when Donald Trump wasn't president. Now that he's president, oh my God, stop the presses. And
he
I'm not, I'm going to call baloney where I see it. And that's what I see here.
Massey's taking massive donations from the Gates. He got a max donation from Rory Gates, Bill Gates' son. Everybody that the team Massey hates is supporting Massey, which is so crazy. But the Gates thing is very peculiar because he was very intimately involved. You had his ex-wife on that interview saying crazy stuff about Bill will have to explain his own involvement with Epstein. I'm not going to say anything. Are you are you a politician who believes the public should know everything, a full disclosure on Epstein, or do you think that there is some sort of need for confidentiality in proceedings moving forward? How can we expect Congressman Fine to deal with Epstein?
Yeah, I don't know, but what I will say this: remember how I talked about on the dual citizen stuff that
Yeah.
motivation matters.
Hmm.
And I am very disgusted by whether or not we release the Epstein files. I think the motivation behind it is not noble.
Hmm.
Again, people who Thomas Massey was in Congress in 2021. Thomas Massey was in Congress in 2022. Thomas Massey was in Congress in 2023. Thomas Massey was in Congress in 2024. So were the overwhelming majority of people who signed that discharge petition. I think we deserve to know their motivations for doing what they're doing now and why they didn't do it when they did it before those of us whose motives are pure wade into that fight. I'm going to demand that explanation before I
Hmm.
move forward.
Yeah, I think that's like it. When you talk about bad actors, it's like the Kennedy files that just dropped. Everybody when Trump said that he was going to drop them, it was like 6 months of, oh, it was the Jews, it was Israel, 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 Israel. The Kennedy files get released, and it's like all about aliens and Russia and nothing about the Jews. And they're just like, nothing's there. We don't care about the aliens. We don't care
Well,
about any of that.
I will tell you on the Epstein things, on the Epstein files. Look, what Epstein did was horrible, and I'm not trying to deny it. And anyone who does that to a child deserves to rot in hell forever. I mean, I'm not disputing that, but I do wonder if his name was O'Shaughnessy, if people would be as worked up and that concerned. Is it because his name is Epstein that the fury is there? But again, that's what I'm saying. I got to get behind the motives
And
because no one
because
cared
it's
about.
Epstein, they say that the foreign government involved, it must be Israel, you know,
Yeah.
even though Prince Andrew was like the main guy, you know, they don't even want to look at that.
What
Epstein's
what
not.
I'm what I'm what I'm very comfortable about in the Epstein files is this: Joe Biden and the Democrats had control of those files for years. They were willing to arrest Donald Trump, prosecute Donald Trump, kill Donald Trump, try to throw him in jail, make stuff up to try to keep Donald Trump from being president. If there was something in the Epstein files that made Donald Trump look bad, they would have released it when they were in charge, but they didn't. So I don't worry about it from that reason. I don't know what's in them. I don't have any access to them. But my interest really relates to the motivation of the people today because I'm disgusted that Jeffrey Epstein got arrested in 2019. He didn't get arrested last week.
Right.
Why the newfound interest? And I think those people owe us an explanation for that before we tolerate their new outrage.
Without a doubt. Absolutely, without a doubt. And you have Democrats like Harry Sisson, who all of a sudden are obsessed with Epstein. And that the Democrat obsession with Epstein now is the most
But
bizarre thing.
where was it in 2021, in
You could have.
2022,
You
in
had Merrick Garland. Why didn't you
2023,
arrest
and
Trump?
where was it? Where was the outrage? Where was it? Where's this newfound outrage? Because whatever Epstein did, it was well before now. And so
Mm,
where's the why were you not mad then, but you're mad now? I want
because
to know.
Trump. Because Trump is
Yeah,
back.
I guess that's the reason.
Because Trump is back, and they need cannon fodder. So, one thing that I find repulsive about politicians right now is that everybody's trying to speculate on who's going to be president in 2028, and they're trying to get behind that now. And we have had a historical successful year. This one year might have been more successful than all 4 years of Trump in Trump version 1. And we have 3 more wonderful years to look forward to. And President Trump possibly can end term limits on the presidency and be president again. But they want to divide up the corpse of Trump now, and they want to push towards JD Vance. And like that's the whole thing with Tucker. 2 questions. what do you say to everybody who wants to speculate on 2028 here in 2025? And secondly, and perhaps even more important, um, what do you think about suspending term limits so that President Trump can run and be president for a third term?
All right, so two different questions. Look, I think we have an election we need to win next year.
Mm.
We need to make sure that we hold the House, we hold the Senate, frankly, increase our numbers in the Senate so we can try to get towards 60 and increase our numbers in the House. That needs to be the focus. 2028 is a long time away,
And there are
and
Republicans
we've
who
got an
want to
election that we
lame
need to do.
duck President Trump.
Yeah,
Sorry to interrupt you,
we need.
Congressman.
I understand why people think about it because people want to think about it's fun to talk about, but I think we need to be focused on the 2026 midterm,
Amen.
and that's where my focus is. As it relates to term limits, I said, and I stand by it. I would support repealing it because I believe that as long as Donald Trump is willing to be the president of the United States, we should let him do it. Now we have to repeal the amendment to do that. Our framers did not put that in. That was something that we did less than 100 years ago. About 80 years ago is when we put those limitations in place. But I don't know anyone who ever thought all of the living hostages would come back from Gaza. And no one could have done that other than Donald Trump. And so for as long as someone who can make miracles happen wants to be our president, I support letting him stay there to do it.
That's really great, and I hope President Trump, you're watching, and you could count on Randy Fine to get you over the ledge on that third term. We want that consecutive eight
He
years of
knows.
Trump. At
He
least we
knows.
didn't get
He
that in
knows.
2020. But that, as one thing that I'm very concerned about for 2026 is, like I said earlier, this like concept that there's no enemies on the right. There are enemies on the right, and the enemies on the right want to lame duck President Trump, and they're vested in attacking people like you, other congressmen, and they would be happy with Democrats controlling the House for 2026 to 2028, thinking that it's going to give them a leg up for 2028 with JD Vance. What do you
Well,
say
they
to
they
that?
want to win. They want to win in 2026 because that's how they end the Trump presidency, right? I mean, it's hard enough to get good bills passed as it is. If
Yeah.
Democrats controlled the House and the Senate, we wouldn't get anything good passed. That's why that election matters so much. And I think the people who want to talk about 2028 probably want to get us to take our eye off the ball for 2026, which is where it should be.
So as we wrap up our segment together, I want to ask you, as our leader, what can we do for 2026? Give us directions.
Well, I think look at who represents you now. If you have a Republican, you got to make sure they get elected. And if you've got Democrats, look for a good Republican to take them on. I mean, we have a very, very small majority in the House, and Mike Johnson does an amazing job of holding us together. I don't know that anybody else could do the job because it is the hardest job in Washington. When you've got 219 people, all who have huge egos, and you've got to keep basically almost all of them unified on everything. It's a very difficult job that he has. It'd be nice if he had 225 or 230 or 235. Same thing in the Senate. If you've got Republicans that you can support, what people need to do, whether it's their money, it's their volunteering, it's their making phone calls. We need people to get involved and make sure we have a great election next year. And then the other thing we can do is we've got to stamp out the Groyperism. The Groyper class will eat us from within if we do not deal with it. The Groypers do not support Donald Trump. They did not support him in 2024. They are aligned with the Muslim terrorists. They just want to destroy us. So we need to stamp that out within our own party. Those are the two things that people can do.
The one person I didn't ask you about that I wanted to ask you about was Matt Gaetz. At one point, he was a Floridian congressman. There's a lot of rumors of sexual misconduct. His exit from Congress to become the opener for Dan Ball. Dan Ball's amazing, but to be was a major step down from being foremost one of the foremost leading advocate lawmakers. What's your take on Matt Gaetz as one of these Groyper disruptor classes, and also the Herring brothers over at One America News, who have promoted this and pushed this kind of Matt Gatesism type of a thing? Do you think he signed a decent contract? Is he going to how do you include Matt Gaetz in that? Do you think that there's anything suspicious about him?
So I never served with Matt. Matt left the Florida legislature as I was coming in. Matt obviously left Congress as I was coming in, or actually 6 months before I came in. So I don't have the experience of actually serving alongside him. I will say that a lot of his rhetoric on his show is disappointing. For example, pushing the $7,000 nonsense, which is was just Muslim terror propaganda, was widely debunked. It's disappointing. Matt's not a stupid guy, and to push some of the stupid arguments that he makes is somewhat disappointing.
What was your take on the sexual misconduct stuff?
I only know what you know. So
Mm.
like I said, I was not around for any of it. So I don't have
Mm.
any firsthand knowledge at all. So I only know what I read. And look, it's not good. It's a lot of untoward stuff. But I don't have any in. Like I said, I never served with the guy, so never don't know it. Don't really know a lot of these people that he was around. A few I know somewhat, but I never served with them, and I don't have any insight beyond what I read, which doesn't sound very good. But I only know what you read in the media.
Congressman, I met you in your freshman year as an assemblyman through the RJC. And we've had conversations throughout the years, and some things we've agreed on, some things we haven't agreed on. And since the war in Gaza, since your senatorial campaign, since your congressional campaign, I have developed so much respect for you. And so much, I know that we're not going to agree on everything. There's so many issues. And I hate how people are like, if you can't see 100% with somebody, you can't support them on the one thing that they're doing. And in your case, so many more than one thing. I have so much respect for you, for your
Thank you.
fight, for your bravery and your courage. God bless your family that they've given us their husband and their father. It's I imagine it's incredibly not easy for them when you get death threats. They probably are very scared themselves. You're under the gun tremendously, and we're here for you for 2026, 2028, 2030. You're here for a very long time. We need you in Congress. So I want to encourage all of my friends, all of my followers to get involved in Congressman Fine's campaign. Where do we go to donate? Where do we go to get involved? What can we do on the ground? Floridians that want to connect through the show, how can we get them to you? You are probably the most consequential congressman in the House, certainly for Jews, but
Well,
maybe for the country.
I'm sitting in front of my congressional backdrop, so I'm loath to bring up politics. I'll say what people can do officially is they can follow me on social media. I'm on all the platforms, my official stuff at Rep Fine. And if people want to support me politically, all I'll say is Google me, and you'll be able to figure it out on their own.
You really are an American hero and patriot, and I thank you for all your time today. I hope to get you on the show again when I have a much better voice and we can really dig into the issues. But Godspeed. Good luck to you with everything you're doing in the House. We all have your
Thank you.
back, and you make us all
I
proud
appreciate it,
every
buddy.
single day. Thank you, Congressman.
Thanks. It was good to see you.
God bless. All right, folks, there you heard it. Congressman Randy Fine, the most infamous, notorious congressman on the internet. And here we are, finishing up. My voice, I think, got better as the show went on. I kind of like found that niche, that niche. But these are gonna make for some epic clips of me with my scratchy ass voice. But God willing, guys, get out there, clip the shows, support the broadcast, tune in. We got more great guests. If you look through my guest list, I don't know, the last year has just been like wild, just wild. I have been involved in almost every single Jewish controversy on X. Everybody's been on the show. I've gone on their shows. We're going to continue. We're not going to stop, even if the opposition is loud, even if they speak their lies and manipulate masses. We're not going to stop. And we're winning. We already won. People tell me all the time, "Oh no, the Jews, how do you we got to stop them, crush the Jews, crush it." We already won, folks. We already won. You know when the Jews really won? 1776. That's when the Jews won. When we helped finance the American Revolutionary War and became ingrained into this Judeo Christian narrative called America. And one thing I like to share in the founding of this country, you had a ton of different types of Jesus followers: Protestants, Lutherans, etc., Catholics. And then you had Jews. That was it. There was no Muslims here. You had a couple witches. That wasn't like an organized religion. So in the Constitution, the very first law of the Constitution says freedom of religion. Who are they talking about? They're talking about Jews. Freedom of religion was given to America by our founders because of Judaism, because they believed that Jews, like other religious immigrants that would come later, would add to the vibrancy and the culture of our country. That's why I hate it when people say this is a Christian country. It's not a Christian country. It's a freedom of religion country. And that does not mean one religion over the other. So I really hope, God willing, that some people can stop with their false narrative on Randy Fine and look at the good that he's really doing for the America First movement, because this guy's on fire. He's everything that you wanted Thomas Massey to be, but he's Randy Fine. And he's not a dual citizen, but he's definitely carrying the flag of American freedom. So we got to stand with Randy Fine. We got to stand with our Jewish compatriots online. And we have to stand with President Trump. We can't become dissuaded or taken around, by these grifters who want to turn the America First MAGA movement into something else. A smaller tent, not a larger tent. Anyways, my voice is crazy. I'm going to end this broadcast. I had a really great time with all you today. Congressman Randy Fine, my favorite congressman in the House. What an epic honor. And it's an honor to talk to you guys all the time like this. It's a big honor for me. So I want to thank you for tuning in week after week, allowing me to have this voice and this platform, and to bring on amazing guests where you can hear it first. Send me your takes. I got Jake Shields in 2 weeks. That's going down again. There's some talks of Seth Dillon. Should be really nice. Send in requests. If there's somebody on the internet you want on the show, seems like people are very willing to step on the show these days. So tune into the broadcast. We are going to continue every single time, unafraid, unapologetic, authentic. God bless. Shabbat Shalom. And thank you all for tuning in. Peace.